Hi everyone. Let's practice a little yoga. We're going to work on getting your spine moving in all kinds of different ways. We're going to work lying down, seated, and at the end of the practice with your feet on a wall. So you'll need a little space at the wall, a little bit wider than your body, where you can lie perpendicular to the wall. So you might see if you can locate that. If you don't have a wall you can work with the side or back of a couch or something like that. So do your best in the space you're in. If getting down on the floor isn't a reasonable thing for you to do right now, you can work on your furniture. You may need to be a little creative with some parts of the practice, but it's all good. We're going to start lying down. Feel free to have a blanket or a pillow for under your head if you like. You don't have to. And if you've learned to step your feet really close to your body, sometimes that makes it hard to focus on movement in the lower back. So you might step your feet a little bit further away. We want to still feel really stable and grounded through the feet, but we also want to be able to have a sense of space in the knee joints, the hip joints, and the low back. Whatever feels good with your arms and hands. We'll take these first few breaths just to settle onto the floor. Seeing where it's possible for your body to relax a little bit, just allowing the support of the ground, the props, the furniture, whatever it is that's underneath you. And check in with any sensations you're noticing to start the practice. So we want to make sure as we're practicing that we're not increasing any sensations of discomfort, particularly ones that are in the realm of pain. You shouldn't be creating pain by what you're doing. You may have pain that is pre-existing, but we don't want to be making anything more intense for this particular practice, because in part we're working with your brain. So for this practice, we're not going to practice being in pain any more than is absolutely necessary. We're going to start by finding a really basic pelvic tilt movement. So if you think about if you had a little marble on top of your lower belly, you're going to roll that imaginary marble towards your belly button. To do that, you're going to lift your tailbone up and flatten your low back towards the floor. And then you're going to roll that marble back to its starting position, maybe even a bit in the other direction towards the pubis bone or the base of the pelvis, arching your low back off the floor. So we're going to do a few repetitions of this nice and easy. And as you're moving your low back here, you want to pay attention to what's going on in the rest of your body. Sometimes we'll notice that we're sliding a lot towards the head and shoulders, or that your head is nodding a lot. And that's always interesting to pay attention to. That happens often if the low back is stiff. Rather than the low back moving, some of that energy of trying to move the low back is moving up through the body. So not a huge problem, but we're going to try to quiet the rib cage, the shoulders, and the head, and really work maybe with smaller movements, less effort, down in the low back, just getting whatever movement exists. And then we're going to switch this up a little bit. So if you imagine you've got a clock face right on top of your pelvis here, you're going to label either the belly button or the pubis bone as 12 o'clock, and the other one is 6 o'clock. Now, some people seem to think about the belly button more as 12, or some people seem to prefer to have this be 6. So make it make sense to you. And then these two bony hip points on the sides of the pelvis, where your hip bones jut forward, those are 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, depending on the orientation of your clock face. So when you're ready, you're going to rock your pelvis again towards the belly button, whether that's 12 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and then you're going to go over towards 3 o'clock. Imagining you're rolling that little marble over to 3 o'clock, and then can you roll it down to the base of the pelvis, either 12 or 6, and then over to 9, and then back to the starting position. So you're just going around your clock face, 12 to 3 to 6 to 9, or whatever direction is making sense to you. We're going from navel to hip point to pubis to the other hip point, around the clock face. And we're going to see how much of this movement can really be contained down in the pelvis and low back. No pain. We're going to go the other way. Sometimes there's a little sensation, especially if this is a new movement to you. Things can be a little creaky. But there shouldn't be the kind of sensations that make you go, ow. So nice and gentle, tiny is fine. This is hard. So if you're finding it hard, it's not just you. You're going to let your pelvis rest now. Let your low back rest, let your legs rest. Be here for a moment, take a few breaths. Just notice any awareness or sensation in around the low back. And then we're going to roll to one side and just press up, or if you want to press up another way, that's fine. We're going to come to a seated position here for a moment. So you may have noticed I sat on a blanket. As often for a lot of people, a little more comfortable if you sit on something, a cushion, a blanket, a yoga block, so that you're lifted a little bit through the sitting bones. It can make it a little bit easier to sit upright without strain. So an option if it feels good for you. I'm going to take a moment again to really feel your connection to the ground. Let yourself settle into the floor. We're going to take the right hand to the floor. Over on the right side, if that feels like a stretch for you, you're welcome to put a block under your hand. If you're seated in a chair, you can put your hand on the edge of the chair or up onto your lap if you prefer. If your shoulder's healthy, you can bring your left arm up and over. We're going to create a little side bend here. Now, when we're side bending, we're going to think about seeing if we can side bend more up in the armpit and the rib cage rather than down in the low back or the waist, like leaning over from here. We're going to really try to keep ourselves more side bending from up in the upper chest, armpit. And then you're going to just breathe here. And you can stay or you can add a little movement. So you might turn your chest and your gaze towards that right leg. And then turn your heart and your gaze up towards the sky. You're finding a little bit of a twist now through the ribcage. Nice and easy, no strain, only if it feels good. If this arm is not working for you, you can bring it down, you can rest it on the head, you can rest it on the chest. So whatever feels helpful for you as you feel your way into this movement. We've got a little bit of a side bend now and a little bit of a twist happening. And then when you're ready, you're going to come back up. Sit for a moment, notice how you feel. And then we're going to come over to the other side. So left hand down to the left, right hand either up over the ear, or you can rest it by your side, you can rest it on your chest, whatever works. And then we're going to breathe into this area through the side ribs, right side ribs, and up into the right armpit. Really feeling that side bend opening. And then you're going to find a little twist here if you like. So gaze and chin, as well as chest to some extent. You may not be able to turn fully towards the leg, but everything's coming down towards that left leg and then up towards the sky, any amount that feels good. So we don't have the rotation here to truly be able to rotate all the way towards the leg and all the way towards the sky without doing some contortions, which we don't need to be doing. Remember, you can feel free to rest your hand somewhere else if that works better for you. We're trying to remain in that side bend and then add that little bit of a twist here. Breathing nice and easy as you do. Noticing what happens. And then when you're ready, you're going to come back upright. Take a moment to just breathe and feel. Notice the sensations. Maybe a little bit of different sensation going on here. And then we're going to do a little bit of cat and cow movement. Now, this is a movement that is really well known. Gets your whole spine moving, and there's all kinds of different ways to think about cat-cow. So for today, we're going to be working on moving each segment of the spine in its own, on its own, right? Sequentially through the spine. And you may find that that's possible for you. You may not find that it's possible for you, but we're going to give it a shot. For those who feel like being on hands and knees in the pose that this is most commonly done in is not for you, I want to show you that it's possible to do this movement to some extent in seated. I would probably have kept that blanket if I was going to do it this way. So you can have your hands on your lap, you can have your hands on the ground in front of you. When we do cat pose, we're going to round the spine in this direction. When we do cow pose, we're going to round in the opposite direction, heart lifting forward, head and tail back. Okay. So you can play with that in seated if you prefer. It can be a little harder to feel the sequential movement, but it doesn't mean there's no benefit. So you're going to go ahead and do whatever feels good here. If you're going to try it in all fours, feel free to put some padding under the knees. Feel free, if your hands don't comfortably come onto the floor this way, to come up on your fists or to come down on your forearms and see if that helps. It's a little bit easier on your hands and wrists. And if you're still working on being able to be on your hands or you have reasons why you can't, those little changes can be really helpful here. So move forward a little bit. And take a couple of breaths just to get centered. So feeling your weight even if you can between the two hands and the two knees. A nice slow, easy breath. And then we're going to think about starting with your tailbone. Tucking your tailbone under and seeing if you can isolate that movement in the very lower part of your spine. And then imagine that that movement is traveling one vertebra at a time up your spine. Technically, you can't move one joint at a time because they're connected to the ones around them. But the idea is we're trying to isolate. So taking our time coming up into the mid-back, into the upper back, head and neck go last. And then reversing, starting with the tailbone. Now here you may notice, because the spine is in the opposite curve, some give has to happen in order to allow a full release down into the lower back. But we're really trying to take our time here and go through the different sections of the spine and get them all moving. So sometimes what happens is the parts of the spine that move easily do all the work. And then the parts of the spine that are a little stiffer, usually up here in the upper back, those parts of the spine might not move at all. And so the idea of slowing this movement down and moving sequentially through the spine is that we can start to pay attention to trying to get more of the spine involved in this movement and really noticing how we can get movement from those parts of the spine that are a little stiffer. And then maybe we quiet a little bit the parts of the spine that are more mobile, usually right in the mid-back, to some extent the lower back, and then the neck really is made so we can look around in all directions, which is fantastic. So you're going to take maybe another cycle of this cat-cow if you're still going. And then you're going to rest. If you know child's pose, you could rest there if it's a pose that you like. Otherwise, you might just sit for a moment and notice how you feel. And then the last thing that we're going to do is come and bring our feet on the wall. And I'll just show you from the side for a moment. So you're going to bring your legs into a right angle. I don't have a wall here, I'm being lazy. So we're going to think about knees above hips, and then shin bones more or less horizontal, and then feet, you can imagine my feet are on a wall. I'm going to show you from the back here. So I'll set myself up with this wall right here. And I'm more or less in that same position. I'll take a couple of breaths just to get settled. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist here, but I'm going to let my feet guide. So I'm taking little steps in one direction, letting my pelvis follow, going only as far as it feels good. And then walking back in the other direction, letting my legs lead and my pelvis follow. So the feet on the wall is going to help me control this twist. I have a little extra support than I do if my feet are not on the wall. And I get to really feel into how this movement is for me as I go through this full range of motion. And where maybe it would be a good idea to slow down so I can really make sure that it feels good. And where maybe it's getting a little bit challenging to where actually I don't have a whole lot more twisting ability in the spine. But if my feet were floating, I might get that movement by compensating in a different way. Not a huge problem. But using the wall in this way just helps us experience the movement slightly differently. You can play with this a little bit. Getting some nice gentle twisting through the mid and low back. And then if you're comfortable here, you can come back and you maybe even just straighten the legs up the wall a little bit, or you could leave them bent like this if you prefer. If this is not a win for you to be in this position, you might sit up or lie down away from the wall for a moment if you like. I'm just going to take a moment to feel and letting your body settle. Getting into a stillness, stiller quality for a moment, just to see what that brings up for you. What do you feel in your body that may be different from how you started? Where is your awareness drawn? What else do you notice? If you have some extra time, feel free to linger, taking a little more rest. If you enjoyed these different movements, you can practice them and just notice how they change over time. If you have any questions or you have experiences you'd like to share, I hope you'll do so in the comments. Be happy to help out with any questions you might have. Hope you really enjoy this practice. Take really good care.